Welcome to Lunch with the Lord. I'm Pastor Mark. We will be looking at Galatians chapter 4, starting at verse 21. But before we begin, our theme verse for Lunch with the Lord, Jeremiah 15:16. Thy words were found, and I did eat them. Thy word was unto me the joy and rejoicing of my heart. Now, in verses 21 through 31 of chapter 4, Paul is appealing to the Galatians by contrasting two different covenants. So 21 to 31, Paul is going to be talking about two different covenants of the Old Testament, and Paul is going to contrast them. All right? Now in verses 21 through 24, Paul will now use an allegory to illustrate the difference between those who are under grace and those who are under the law. All right? Now, let's start in verse 21. Paul says here, "Tell me, you that desire to be under the law, do you not hear the law?" So Paul says, "Ye that desire to be under the law." Now, in the Greek context, the Greek text, the definite article is not before the word law. So if you read the Greek text of Galatians chapter 4, verse 21, it does not say, "Ye that desire to be under the law." It says, "Ye that desire to be under law." Law. Now, you and I know that Paul is talking about the law of Moses, all right? And because this whole letter to Galatia is about the law of Moses. But we can take this and we can apply this to our life today. The Galatians could apply it also. No definite article before the law. Paul could be speaking about other laws, right? As we saw in Galatians earlier, that they were, before Paul went and preached the gospel in Galatia, many of the Galatians were idolaters. Okay? They practiced idolatry. And with idolatry comes a set of rules or regulations that specific idol has, right? They worship a statue, or they worship this wooden thing, or a tree or a plant or something, but always behind that statue, there's a set of rules and regulations that you have to live by, that you have to do in order to keep that statue happy, in order to keep that plant or that tree happy. Okay? So, yes, Paul is talking specifically about the law of Moses, but the Galatians could also apply it to other laws. We today can apply it to our other laws, church rules, right? Anything that we think that we need to do in order to receive righteousness or a right standing with God, all right? So, it's not just talking about the law, but we can apply it today to any set of laws that we could live by. So Paul here says, "You that desire to be under law, do you not hear the law?" Don't you hear it? And this is the problem with people. The problem that people have throughout all of history is that, yeah, there are laws, there are rules and regulations, but Paul says, do you hear do you hear what that law is actually saying? They do not hear all of what the law says. They willingly, and today you have it today also. You have it also today. People willingly refuse to ignore, they willingly refuse and they ignore certain portions of the laws or the rules by which they are living, because they don't want to know. Because they don't want to know the bad parts. They only want to know the good parts, the wonderful things. Oh, you mean if I keep this law, I'll have righteousness with God? Oh, that's wonderful. If I keep this law, God's going to bless me with lots of bread and butter? Oh, so wonderful. Tell me more about the law. Oh, if I keep these laws, God is going to bless me with another house somewhere, big land, and lots of tomatoes and cucumbers and things. Oh, it's so wonderful, right? And people focus on the blessings of that law, but they they refuse to hear all the law. They don't want to hear everything. There's certain points of the law that they don't want to hear. Okay? They want to know all about the blessings that they will receive. But that's it. That's it. And that's human nature. Human nature only wants to hear the good part. They don't want to hear the bad stuff. Don't tell me the bad stuff. Oh, I'll get the government to tell you not to tell me about the bad stuff. That's right. If you're too strong, I'll get the government to tell you. And I'll have the government tell you, we'll make laws that you can't tell us what we can hear and what we can't hear. They refuse to hear what the law says. In Ezekiel chapter 18, verse 20, the soul that sinneth, it shall die. The soul that sins, it shall die. Oh, I don't want to hear that. Well, sorry, but that's in the law. In Jeremiah chapter 11, verse 3, cursed be the man that obeys not the words of this covenant. What was that? Cursed. That's right. Cursed is the person who does not obey the words of this covenant. Oh, I don't want to hear that. That's not nice. That doesn't make me feel good. Well, sorry, but that's in the law. Deuteronomy 27:26. Cursed be he that confirms not all the words of this law to do them. Paul said, if you're going to be a law keeper, you better keep the whole law. And part of the law is Deuteronomy 27:26. God pronounces a curse upon anyone that does not confirm all the words of the law. James chapter 2, verse 10. For whosoever shall keep the whole law and yet offend in what? How many parts? 10 parts? No. You mean 100 parts? No. How about 3 parts? No, not 3. The Bible says, whosoever keeps the whole law, and if you offend in 1 part, only 1 part, you can keep the whole law, but you mess up 1 little detail of that law. Well, you know what? You're guilty of the whole law. Oh, no, I'm not. I'm only guilty of that 1 little law. That's it. I kept all the other ones. I'm good there. You can check me off on that. Ha! I'm good on those. I only offended in this 1 little one. That's it. That's it. Only the 1 little one. God says, oh, I'm sorry. No. If you offended in 1 law, you offended the whole bunch, the whole thing. The Galatian believers were willingly turning a blind eye toward portions of the law that warned them, and they were endeavoring to start observing a set of laws that no person could ever keep to try to attain a right standing with God, that they can only be attained by exercising faith and receiving grace. And as I said last lesson, if you didn't hear it, go to last lesson. Everything that they wanted, they already had. The right standing that they wanted before God, the right standing that they were trying to attain through keeping the law of Moses, They already had that with God through Christ, not through the law. Now they're trying to attain it through the law. They're throwing Christ out and trying to attain it through the law. Paul is saying, through Christ, you already have it. You already have everything you need. And so here, the Galatian believers, Paul is saying to them, if you're gonna observe the law, then you better know what it says. He says here, verse 21, do you not hear what the law says? You need to hear what the law says, the good and the bad. If you're going to keep it, you better do it all. And this is the problem that they had. And they're just like us today. Oh, I have to keep these rules. Only tell me the good ones. I don't want to hear anything bad. I don't want to hear the bad part. Or you can tell me, but then I'll forget about it. Right? And this is where they stood. Now, in verses 22 through 25, we have Abraham's two sons. All right? Paul is going to use Abraham's two sons as a picture of people's relationship to God, either by law or by grace. All right? He says here, for it is written that Abraham had two sons, the one by the bondmaid and the other by a free woman. But he who was of the bondwoman was born after the flesh, but he of the free woman was by promise. Okay? Ishmael was born from a bondwoman after the normal course of life. Now, if Abraham would have truly trusted God in the first place, then Ishmael would have never been born. If Abraham would have trusted God right from the beginning, there would have been no Ishmael. Isaac was born from a free woman by the promise of God, and Isaac's birth had to be by the promise of God, because it could only be a miracle of God that he could have been born. Isaac's birth was not only by promise, but came from a miracle. Abraham was 99 years old. Sarah was 90 years old. She was past childbearing age. And it was only by the promise and the miracle of God that Isaac was born. And so now Paul here is going to bring up these two brothers, two sons of Abraham, to tell the difference between law and grace. All right? We'll get into that next lesson. Until then, though, walk with the Lord. I know He walks with you.